be talking to you all today about the incentives behind scientific progress. So the challenge with science, and everything's incentives, right? I mean, that's how humans work. But the challenge with science, of course, is the kind of the time scale which it operates. So got to be thinking long term. And so there's some challenges here. So like I said, the problem, I'm just kind of outline problem and then hopefully go through a few solutions here. So how we're tackling it at VitaDAO and then more generally. So currently there's just kind of a lack of incentives in many areas of the scientific in the scientific domain. So to sustainably contribute to scientific progress. So there's several places, kind of three major buckets I think about a lot are the funding space, the publishing space, and the kind of commercialization space. So kind of translating the results from the lab to people and getting them out in the world. And so in terms of funding, so there's of course, lack of funding is an issue. The pace of funding isn't keeping up with inflation, et cetera, et cetera. There's also a lack of innovation. There are a lot of people speak to projects, what the types of projects that get funded by the major funding bodies these days. Not the most innovative projects. So there's kind of a lack of incentives for people the people that are really creative to really go after things, because there's not the money there, not the people. They don't feel like the people are focusing on innovation. So in terms of publishing, so this space is also lamented quite often. So the value is not captured by the scientists. So it's the value is mainly captured by the academic journals, with many of them which are for profit, and despite the research being funded by the public. So there's kind of a weird there's actually kind of a weird paradox there with the public money essentially going to private organizations' pocketbooks. And then to make matters worse, they don't necessarily share the knowledge. So they they have kind of restrictive policies on how you can access the information. Of course, that information should be freely available since we all pay for it. So major issues there, and I'll talk about a solution we've developed at VitaDAO for it. And then lastly, commercialization. So kind of surprisingly, if you're familiar with Moore's law, of course, computer innovation gets faster all the time. Sadly, in biotech, innovation kind of is slowing over time. So it's taking more time and costing more money to translate the results from the lab to people. And we hope we have at least part of a solution for that. So in terms of solutions, so I a huge advocate of the promise of blockchains and cryptocurrencies. And so the different components, it's not really cryptocurrencies and blockchains and are not really one thing. There's a huge diversity of activities going on. And so I think the different kind of buzzwords have different attributes which can help in these three areas that I've highlighted. So with the funding, the publishing, and the commercialization. So in terms of funding, there's a lot of new funding sources. VitaDAO is one of those. Gitcoin is one. I think Saba mentioned the longevity prize. There's a variety of funding mechanisms being implemented. So Gitcoin has this really cool kind of quadratic funding model where it depends more on the number of people funded rather than the who's giving a lot. Any one particular person giving a lot of money. It really matters how many people give the money. So that's a pretty cool solution. In terms of publishing, I think many of us think that the blockchain is an interesting way to kind of combat the kind of status quo of how publishing works these days. And so if you're not familiar, many people kind of deride the blockchain as, it's essentially a database. Well, that is true, but it's an open source database, so anyone can read and write from it. So, the data doesn't get lost in institutions when people leave and stuff like that. So it allows for better information dissemination, permanence, and of course, because they're often tied to cryptocurrencies, to monetization layers. And so we have an example that we've been working on, pretty new. So appreciate your feedback, that we called TLDR, we're calling it the Longevity Decentralized Review, and it's really tackling the peer review aspect of publishing. And then lastly, in terms of the commercialization, we think a big part of the issue is that particularly in biotech, a lot of biotech flows through big organizations, universities, pharma companies, and that's just as you can imagine, if any of you all have ever been in big organizations, it's very slow. And so we think really more of peer-to-peer, focusing on the researchers is going to be the more efficient path to bootstrap a company that can commercialize the research. And so we're referring to this approach as DTT, Decentralized Tech Transfer. Okay, so starting with the DTT and just going through the status quo to start with, and the commercialization space. So a lot of what happens when research gets, when inventions happen, the researchers go talk to their TTO offices, the tech transfer offices at their organizations, mainly universities, for example. And these TTOs, they do help research. I'm benefited a lot from them, but they're of course acting in the institution's interest, right? The priority is on the institution, not on the researcher. So the inventors themselves are deprioritized in the process. The resources at the TTO offices are really underutilized. So the TTO officials themselves aren't adequately incentivized to get things done. So they, it's just kind of a volume approach, not quality, quantity over quality. And so the problem is then actually most IP ends up sitting on the shelf, not monetized. So it's really not an ideal setup. And so a lot of the amazing work that gets done by people at universities is just not, it never sees the light of day. And then of course that then means that the base of the larger mission is not accomplished. So, and part of the reason the mission is not accomplished is really actually the surprisingly, the universities, the TTOs, even the researchers themselves are just not actually, business versus science are two quite different disciplines, right? And the scientists and the university folks are just not, I've been at universities my whole life, so I feel like I confidently assert this. It's not actually the people that know how to commercialize the work. In fact, it's really not really the goal of the university. So it's just, there's kind of a valley of death that people often describe, between the stuff that happens in the lab and what gets out in the wild. And so we'd like to bridge that. So the solution we've come up with so far, we're calling it DTT, Decentralized Tech Transfer. And so the basic focus is on the people. Definitely it's on the researchers, the inventors, the people that have the ideas. And then, it's not siloed to wherever you live in the world, unlike a lot of funding agencies. We really want to be continuously reaching out to researchers around the world. And kind of the beauty of academia is actually you can access most researchers. You're literally just an email away. Researchers are just dying to tell people about what they're working on. And so it's just really, I think that's underutilized, that just the accessibility of researchers around the world. So really they're passionate about their ideas and just want their voices to be heard and their ideas to be for people to care about what they're doing. Okay, and so the simple thing is, to kind of extract the researcher from the university to focus, to have them be a consultant. And so at pretty much all universities, you can consult for an organization. And so the basic idea is to set up a new organization, a new company where the researcher is a consultant there. And so they can set the terms there. So it's not going to involve their institution. It's just them as kind of an independent, as an independent person. And so then the third bullet point here is that just anyone who's involved is going to be having the ownership. So it's really rents saying the universities are rent seekers is kind of derogatory. I realize that, but it's just to kind of get the point across that you really, the people that are involved in the project, whether it VitaDAO or the researchers themselves or any people that really just are interested in the project, they're the ones who are going to be having the upside. And so it's really the fourth bullet point there is kind of reiteration of that. It's just that the upside is democratized, so anyone can help in the project, incubate it, grow it, collaborate it, which is very different from how things operate today, where it's really everything's kind of siloed off and you don't really hear about a project until it's far along and you really have no way to get involved with it. Okay, so in terms of the advantages of DTT, some of these I kind of went through, but just to kind of reiterate them. So we think hopefully the project will be more efficient. So no more waiting on the universities and their TTO offices, no more waiting on other people. It's just really a peer-to-peer interaction between, in our case, people at VitaDAO and the researchers themselves. And so we think this will be much more economical. There's no, if you're familiar with how academia works, there's huge overhead rates. So you pay, $100,000 for the research, and then you got to pay the university $60,000 more dollars or more at many places to just as kind of fees to kind of use their space. So none of that will be happening because all the work will be happening at contract research organizations or other institutions where we're just operating as a fee for service model and not there's not kind of overhead being taken there. So a big buzzword and in blockchain technology is this idea of composability. So this is kind of, maybe it seems a little bit of a exotic word, but it's, I mean, if you kind of think about it, it's more simple. It's really just, again, the blockchain is a public database. And so the composability just means that anyone can kind of, it's highly interoperable. So it's not, again, things aren't siloed compared to how traditional R&D processes happen. So people can kind of come and go and interact with the blockchain and as they please. And so we really think this will facilitate interoperability between universities and other organizations to make for kind of the best outcome. And then long term, we'd like to kind of have everything be online and on chain. So currently, most of the commercialization process is offline and off chain. And so we really think, I mean, everything is kind of getting digitized these days, and we think most of the steps can be digitized and put on chain using smart contracts. And so the application submission process, which of course is, you know, already happening. I mean, that's, you know, there's online applications for everything these days. That's no big surprise. The project reviewing, the incentivizing, providing tokens, that kind of stuff is not happening. I think we could do more there online and on chain. The funding decisions, we're already doing that at VitaDAO, and other organizations are doing that as well on chain, a snapshot in other places. And then project management, you know, actually carrying out the project commercialization, that also we think we can put aspects of that online and make them more efficient. So we're pretty excited about that. And so just wanted to feature one project which we've already got online, is a Matrix Pharma by Vera Gopanova, who's a prominent geroscientist at the University of Rochester. So she's has pursued many areas of research, but one of them kind of most prominently is the extracellular matrix, and she uses snake and mole rat, which has kind of a pretty cool, very interesting extracellular matrix, and it was a very long-lived animal, and so it's been a really fruitful area of research. And so just really excited about this project. We already launched a company and got some big support from Vera, and so really excited about this project in particular. And you can read about it on our website and other places. Okay, so moving on to the kind of second place where there's kind of a lack of incentives, so is the publishing space. And I've really been interested in this for quite a long time, over a decade now. And so, I mean, a lot of people are trying to come up with solutions to this, and we just think we have, you know, one particular area that may be helpful. But just to kind of, you're not familiar with how the status quo works. So, the gatekeepers here are the academic journals, the Nature, the Cell Sciences, and other organizations like that. So, and using this terminology, exploitation is pretty, you know, obviously strong worded, but I don't think it's unfair. I mean, I think it's really, you know, we pay the journals, you know, huge amounts of money. Really, we don't have thousands of dollars to be giving these journals, but we do for every paper we submit, every manuscript we submit, and then we do the work. We actually do the work for free to actually do the peer review process on these manuscripts to improve them, suggest, make edits, and then, you know, the people that submitted the work, you know, have to go back and revise. So the journals do stuff. I mean, they put the work online, they do market it, et cetera. But, you know, the profit margins of these organizations are massive. And that's not surprising, considering that, you know, they're getting a lot of the work for free, and, you know, everything online these days, the costs are, you know, quite small to do things online these days. So, you know, as a public, we're really paying for something that should be available for free. So very fortunately, this concept of a preprint server has emerged in the last decade or so. And so the kind of more prominent ones have this kind of archive suffix fixed to them, starting with one of the first preprint servers called Archive that started at the University of Cornell. Subsequent ones more dedicated to biospace and other spaces have emerged, such as bioRxiv and medRxiv. And they've really eliminated, you know, I think a pretty important aspect of what, you know, academic journals do, and that's provenance. And so you're not familiar with that. It just means like you'll be the first person to kind of describe something. So you get a timestamp on your work, and, you know, you're the one, you can clearly demonstrate you were the first person to describe this, make this discovery. And so with preprint servers, you know, all journals allow you to post on preprint servers before you post to them. So, or get your work accepted by them. So really the provenance aspect is established by the archive servers and not by the journals. So really the only thing that remains is, in terms of the kind of unique value proposition, is the peer review part. And so that's what we wanted to tackle with TLDR. Okay, so what is TLDR? So it's longevity decentralized review. We're kind of trying to go after the the publishing status quo. And so in essence, like as I've said, it's a focus on peer review. It's an on-demand service, kind of like an Uber for peer review, if you will. And it's funded by those who want their work to be peer reviewed. We'll also accept donations because we realize some people, will object to giving money to have their work reviewed. That's fine. We'll be accepting donations. We're kind of a hybrid business model here. We're focusing on longevity content. If you're familiar with how Stack Overflow works, Stack Exchange Network, or Reddit and the subreddits, we'll have other sites which will have different biology focuses. But for now, we're most interested in longevity, so we're going to be focusing TLDR on that in particular. And then in terms of how it benefits VitaDAO and the larger community, of course, it's revenue. This is a paid service. It will help improve longevity knowledge. Of course, it's peer review, so there's going to be suggestions and edits, and people that are doing the peer review will make the work better. And then lastly, we're interested in commercializing the work. So anything that seems interesting and gets a lot of strong peer reviews on TLDR will be, we can reach out to them and the researchers and bring them into our Dealflow funnel and potentially think about ways to commercialize the research. Okay, and so the advantages. So in this case, is hopefully pretty simple. So the reviewers, not the journals, get compensated. So those really doing the hard work, we want to give them the option to be compensated for their time. I mean, it may not. I mean, I reviewed a lot of work back in grad school for free and was happy to do it. But at some point, your time is money, and I think we need to honor that. So I think that's important to just be explicit about that. There's many ways to put the reviews and the work itself on chain in a decentralized manner. I won't go through details of those, but two prominent approaches we're considering are Weave and IPFS, and you can read about those online. Just a way to kind of allow for better permanence of the scientific record. And then lastly, importantly, I said we want to challenge the status quo, but you can't, academics are conservative, they have constraints. They can't just, we can't just say, screw this system that's been around for, centuries. They have to work within a framework. That's kind of, innovation has to, there is some constraints here. So we wanted to have something that's kind of an opt-in mechanism that's complementary to what academics are doing. So it's a peer review service. They don't have to use it, but it's certainly a way to get more eyes on the work. So we hope it'll just be have a nice add-on service that fills a void that doesn't exist today. And so just here's the basic, picture of the website so far. We want to keep it very simple, nothing fancy, just really focus on the reviews, the work itself, very basic. And we're going to be kind of funding it, hopefully with some Vita tokens, and to get people excited about it, and to incentivize the reviewing of the projects. And so that's just how we'd like to start, and you can look for this live and hopefully in the coming weeks. Okay, so just in summary, both DTT and TLDR are, we think, time and cost efficient and more composable paths to commercialization or publishing, respectively. You can read about proposals on our discourse service at gov.vitadao.com. There's a variety of other ways to read about these on Twitter and other places as well, but those are two kind of the major sources. And then a lot of acknowledgements. So Tyler Galato, Sebastian Grumeyer, Tyler Stahl, Reese Anderson, many people have contributed to these efforts and other related efforts. I just want to give a quick shout out to them as well. And thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.